Hello and welcome to Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer, and welcome once again to another action-packed episode of my podcast. Really excited. Got a lot of really great feedback about last week's episode with Tina Tonelli. I learned a lot of things. I think she learned a lot of things. Lots of really cool stuff. Got a lot of really great engagement via the socials as people reaching out, asking about her, and just talking about some of her experiences and how they might be the same or different than what she's gone through. Obviously, we all experience things in different ways. Neither are bad. It's just what we live in from our own experiences. So once again, if Tina is listening, thanks again for joining last week. And for everybody else that's listening, thank you so much for joining me on this journey as I'm trying to understand the story of everybody out there that I can. Want to remind everybody that you can find the podcast Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. Once again, the show is officially sponsored by the good boys over at jeffseltzer.com for all your Jeff Seltzer needs. You can always check me out at jeffseltzer.com. If you want to reach out to the show directly to either advertise or send me something, you can email the show at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. Want to remind everybody that we are available on all podcast platforms. We are video on Spotify and YouTube. YouTube is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. Also, we are audio on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Good Pods. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you could probably find this one. If you could find a place without this podcast, let me know, and I will work to get it set up. A couple of things I want to talk about before bringing my guest on for this week. Firstly, I am really working hard at getting some more podcast merch. So I do have a few things already. I have some cards, I have some stickers. I got a couple of super limited t-shirts, hats, and I do have a couple of hoodies. Both myself and my daughter Allison have a podcast hoodie. What Allison has wanted to do, my 14-year-old, almost 15-year-old daughter, is she wants to buy something called a Cricut. Now, as a 47-year-old guy, I really have very little idea what a Cricut even is. So she explained to me it's some kind of mechanism that she can create merchandise. So she can make some kind of designs for t-shirts, for sweatshirts, whatever else like that. So very soon, I'm hopeful that we can get some more merch. If you have any interest in terms of getting any kind of merch, a hoodie or a t-shirt, should be fairly affordable. We're thinking around $20 or so a t-shirt. Probably about $45 or so for a hoodie. Definitely shoot me a message on Instagram at Everybody's a Story Pod. DM me there or at Seltzer77 and let me get you on the list. We've already got a few people interested via the Instagram story I posted, I think it was like last week or 2 weeks ago. But if this is something that you are interested in, let me know. There are some potential customization options we might have. So, for example, if you are a previous podcast guest, it's possible it could say guest on the t-shirt along with the logo. So we'll see. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll have something going, but we'll keep you all posted on how that goes. Other thing I want to talk about was an interesting stat that I read today. So I am 47 years old. I was born in 1977. So the math works out. I turned 47 and a half. I guess actually by the time this podcast drops, I will already be 47 and a half years old. If I was living in the year 1900, I would be dead. Now, that doesn't really make any sense, but think about it this way. In 1900, so this would be 125 years ago, the average lifespan of a human in America was 47 years old. Today, in the year 2025, or actually the latest data I found was 2020, the average lifespan is 77 years old. Why is that? Modern medicine, vaccines, all sorts of stuff like that. So with that said, I look at it and I'm like, okay, so as I'm getting older and I recognize that 125 years ago, I probably would have been dead, I might as well make the most of the things that are in my life or around me that I can. So fortunately for me, both myself and my wife have good jobs that offer great health insurance. So with that said, as an older guy, I make the most of the health insurance. I have my various doctor's appointments that I have every year. So I have my annual physical I go to every year. I go to the dentist twice a year. I go to the ENT doctor as needed. I go to the dermatologist because I'm about as white as they come. Basically, any doctor you could think of, I go to every year. Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that if there's any issues with me, I mean, physical issues for the most part, that the doctors can find it ASAP so we can get a fix to it. Now, the one doctor that I didn't mention that I do go to annually is my optometrist, which I will say, first of all, I love my optometrist. She's amazing, but it is by far my least favorite doctor that I go to on an annual basis. So backstory on this, I've been wearing glasses or contact lenses probably since I was like 8 years old, 7 or 8. So you're talking almost 40 years at this point. Now, I always talk to Beth about this, and I mentioned how much I hate or dread going to the eye doctor. And I don't use the word hate lightly. I really don't use the word hate at all. But for this one, I would say it's an appointment that I really don't enjoy. And here's why. Every other appointment I go to is a more passive appointment. So when I go to the annual physical, they poke me, they prod me, they ask for a sample. It's very easy things, right? There's nothing subjective about the appointment. Either, blood is pass fail, I look good, I don't look good, whatever else like that. Same thing with dermatologists. They'll take a sample out of my shoulder. They'll say, okay, it's precancerous, it's not precancerous. They have a method of fixing it. Kind of it is what it is. Now, after going to the optometrist for 40 years at this point, here's my challenge. I sit down at the doctor's chair and they go, okay, which one looks better? Number one or number two? And I'm like, I think number one. Then they go, okay, which one looks better, number one or number three? And I'm like, I think number three, but I'm not sure. Can I see number two again? And like, for me, like my anxiety just kind of goes through the roof when this is going on, because everything else, I just lay there and do their thing. But the eye doctor, like I fully recognize the fact that every decision that I make and everything that I say has long-term implications. Part of this is probably from PTSD that I have from years ago when I went to an eye doctor who gave me contact lenses that were way too strong, and I developed double vision for about 2 months. So for me, I'm sitting there, I'm staring at the wall, and I'm super afraid to say one's better than the other because I don't need lenses that are too strong or too weak, because then it's going to impact me for the rest of the year. So that was bad, right? So that was really tough, and this happens to me every time. That and the whole glaucoma test where they say stare into this little eye hole, and they blow little wind or a little breath into your eye. And for me, like I can't keep my eye open. If I know something's coming at my eye, I close it. So I tell them surprise me, because this is not going to be fun otherwise. So there's that. So, okay, put that aside for a second. This year I'm getting new glasses because my eyesight has gotten worse, as it tends to be. As I'm a late 40s guy, I do need reading glasses now. So I've got reading glasses for when I wear contacts, but for my normal glasses, they now have progressives, which people around me have told me are great, whatever else like that. I'm like, okay. So I went to the eye doctor to get new glasses this past weekend. Progressive went to order. So I picked up the frame. Beth helped me. Thank you so much for Beth. If you're listening right now, we go through it all. And then the lady looks at me and she goes, are you a lefty or a righty? And right off the bat, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to play with this game right now. Reason being, I am both. So it's tough enough that I have to make these decisions when it comes to which lens, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, which one looks the best. But now I have to make a very subjective decision of, do I want to tell her I'm lefty or righty? Now, I'm very weird in the fact that I write lefty, but everything else I do is righty. Very weird situation. I don't know what to do with that. So I'm trying to explain to this lady, like, look, it's not as easy a question as you think it is, because I do both. Like, I write lefty, I throw righty. I eat with both hands. Like, how does this work? I'm not sure what to do with it. So she looks at me and she goes, well, I guess let's just go lefty. So I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen here. We'll see. Glasses should be in like a week or so. I'm hoping for the best. I'll give you guys an update when I get the new glasses. But, as I said before, every other doctor's appointment, I'm fine. They can poke me. They can prod me. A colonoscopy was more fun. I would take a colonoscopy every single year over going to the optometrist ever again. Like, for those of you that have natural 20/20 vision, you should be very, very thankful. It's an amazing thing. Fortunately, both my kids have 20/20 vision. Beth's vision isn't that bad. She wears contacts, but it's not that strong. I would, in a second, go through the preparation for a colonoscopy that have to go to the eye doctor every single year, but that's probably too much information. With that said, I do want to introduce my guest for this week. She is a 2-time guest that we've had. So she was here back in, I believe, September or so of 2024. Litthya Baez, it's great to see you again. How are you today?
Hi, Jim. I'm just cracking up backstage hearing you prefer a colonoscopy.
I mean, it's probably a little off color, but like I try to be honest and transparent wherever possible. I mean, I'm sure I probably lost the teenage generation who were listening. If any of them were listening, they're like, this guy's just disgusting. Get him off of here. I'm sure Mark has probably turned the station. He probably won't listen to this one anymore either. But with that said, I mean, it's the truth. I mean, in my late 40s, I go to 1,000 different doctors, and I don't mind other things. Like if I could just, lay there, they do whatever they have to do, it's fine. But when I have to make decisions that are going to impact the next year, like I don't like that, because then 6 months later, if I'm like, this doesn't work, I feel the stress and the anxiety on myself,
The pressure. Yeah, exactly.
It's so much pressure. So with that said, onto brighter and more positive notes here. So Litthya Baez, like I said before, you might remember her as a guest from last year, where she talked about immigrating to the United States from South America. And it was an amazing and fascinating story. Absolutely loved just how much you shared and talking about everything you've experienced and gone through. This week, we're going to talk about a different topic, as she is in her 50s. I could say that because literally she put that on the screen, so I'm not, outing her age. Like I said, I'm in my late 40s, so at this point, I don't care. I'm living my best life, and I'm happy. So first of all, before we get into the topic about living, about in your 50s, trying new things, or as you get older, trying new things, Litthya, can you give us a reminder of who you are?
Of course. And by the way, thank you for having me again. I think you should have like an SNL that they have a 5 timers club. You should. I'm going for that. Okay.
So it's funny you say that, and again, sorry to interrupt you, but so Daniel Ireland's been on 3 times so far.
I know.
So
I'm on to you, Daniel
yeah.
Ireland.
We're gonna work on it. We've got a couple of them, people in there or whatever. So like Dana's been on twice, Megan's been on twice. This is your second time. Daniel's got 3 times. I do have plans for a couple of more with Marcus and Daniel going forward. So I definitely think one of them will probably hit the 5 timers club the first time. And I made the joke last time also that I got to give him a jacket, or I mean, I've already given him a hat, a T-shirt. So from a show that's in the red with no budget, he's doing pretty well, I think. But we'll see if he hits 5 times what that looks like. But I apologize, Litthya. Can you talk about your journey in terms of who is Litthya and why you're here?
Absolutely. Jeff and I are friends. We met when 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. I don't even remember. But that's not the story because everybody knows him. So my name is Litthya Baez, immigrated from Venezuela, a nation that is hurting right now and suffering a lot of stuff that I'm not going to go through because I don't want people to cry on this episode. But I am a single mom, a full-time worker. I love my job. It's not who I am, but it's part of my life and who I am. And so love being here for the second time, and love having conversations with people like Jeff. Jeff, you are like I told you this. You're like the Kevin Bacon of my circle, right? Everybody who somebody knows you. And there's always the 6 degrees of separation with you, and the fact that I haven't gotten to know people that work with us more as people through your podcast than at the office. So it's incredible how you have played that role without even intending to do that, being the unifier and the humanizer. So I appreciate that. I have 2 wonderful children. One of them 17, going to college in the fall for musical theater, and a wonderful 12-year-old who's in 7th grade. So lot of really important milestones here in the house. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Well, Litthya, thank you again for sharing. And I guess my branding is half right when it says everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer, because truly it seems like everybody does have some kind of story with me. So This is going to be another story that you'll be sharing with me. So again, thank you for joining. The topic for this week, as we said before, is as we get older. So I guess taking a step back. So earlier in life or younger in life, it's easy to try new things, right? Like there's less risk, there's less whatever. We have more time, things like that, right? As we get older, for some reason, it's just tougher to try new things, right? We're in our routines, we do things a lot the same way. And getting us out of our comfort zone tends to be more difficult, let's say in our 40s or 50s, than in like our teenage years or like maybe our 20s or 30s, right? Because it's just something in terms of the way we're wired, at least, n=1 here, in terms of, I've done something the same way for a long time. How do I get out of that, I guess, rut or kind of like that pattern? Litthya came up with the idea and mentioned to me like a while ago. We've had some challenges scheduling this, but we finally did. She said, hey, I'd love to be back on the podcast again and talk about trying new things as we get older. So I said, that sounds fantastic. I mean, again, n=1 here, kicking off a podcast at the age of 46. Like the average 46-year-old is not starting a podcast, right? I have 2 kids in high school. I have a full-time job. I have lots of things going on. Like who has this kind of time, right? I mean, granted, I was doing a lot of video game playing and probably sports gambling and movies and stuff like that. So maybe those have kind of like taken a hit a little bit. But with that said, Litthya, I want to give you the opportunity to at least start talking through, as you've gotten, later in life, as we both have, like what types of things have you tried more recently or less recently that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, well, actually, I have 2 examples for you that are huge for me, which I'm like, I really can't wait to share this with people. Because sometimes, to your point earlier, when you started this conversation in what feels 20 years ago, you talked about how the span of life has increased, and 100 years ago we would both be dead, right? So it's appreciating and thanking God for the fact that we're alive. One of our coworkers said the alternative would be worse than being old, right? So I'm very thankful to be alive, especially because I have gone through some health challenges in my life. I'm a breast cancer survivor. So I think that and my upbringing in Latin America, we have this wing it culture. It's like throw it at me and I'll swing it. I don't know how to play baseball, but I'll go, right? So that the combination of experiences have, taught me to be a little more a little brave when it comes to trying new things. So
Yep.
I'll give you one example.
Sure.
So, as I told you, my 17-year-old is going into musical theater,
Yes.
BFA. I'm very excited. It's speaking of taking risks, right? When we were young, our parents would have said, I don't know about yours, but mine would have said, but sweetie, don't you want to study like something that will pay the bills and whatever? But, my daughter is pursuing her passion since age 10. She's like,
Right.
I'm going to musical theater. So there's such passion for that I really wanted to try. I have always wanted to be a singer when I was little. I wanted to be a pop singer. um, but I never, obviously, I have a different career, which I love. And I sing at church and I sing if I'm, in karaoke with friends or whatever.
Of course.
But there was an opportunity. They opened the show in the Heights in the community college here in Morris, where she takes a couple of classes.
Nice.
So they're like, by the way, mom, you should audition. I'm like, what? No. What? No. What? I'm not a theater person. I have never done theater. No. Like, no. She's like, mom, please, you will be the perfect abuela. Offense taken. I mean, like, wait a second. That lady is in her 80s. Then I learned that the actress, when the show came out in Broadway, she was like 58 years old.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, not too bad, not too bad. But still, I was like, I'm 50. By then I was 50. I'm 51 years old. I have never done theater. Are you on drugs? Right? Like, what is? I hope that is allowed. By the way, that this doesn't get caught in the thing. But anyway, so she insisted.
You can talk about it. You just can't do it on the air. That's all.
Okay. Thanks for the heads
No,
up.
of course.
So yes, so her friends would call me because they call me mom. Sometimes it's very cute.
Nice.
All those theater kids, you have to audition, you have to be abuela, it will be perfect. For those that don't know, In the Heights is a show that Lin-Manuel Miranda, the author of Hamilton,
Yep.
launched before Hamilton.
Right.
It wasn't nearly as successful as Hamilton, but it's a phenomenal show. And then a movie followed,
Okay.
which I think came out 5 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, excellent show. And it really is about our roots, my roots and my daughter's roots. And the music is phenomenal. The message is phenomenal. So I was like, sure, why not? I'll do it. And one of the reasons, two reasons. One, I wanted to connect with my roots, my culture. In the show, the abuela is, she thinks of her mom. She speaks to her mom a lot, who had, of course, passed. And that connection with her mom, who had passed for me, was very powerful because, my mom passed in 2004. So having that connection with her, and, this character sometimes talks to her mom and asks her for advice and, sweet things like that, that Latinos do that a lot. My sister does that a lot. She speaks to my mom a lot. So it gives you that comfort, right? When they're not around physically. So that was one of the reasons. And the other reason is I wanted to get a little flavor of what my daughter experiences when they're in a show,
Nice.
right? Because they come back home exhausted, 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, what the heck do you guys do there? Like, what's all this? And the level of exhaustion, I'm like, why on earth doing something like that when you're going to be exhausted and you need to go to school the next day? Like, why are you so passionate about this? So I really wanted to experience that firsthand. Unfortunately, we were not on the same show because at the same time they had a show on a different place
Okay.
about, I forgot. Oh my gosh, it's a mythical character, Percy Jackson. They had a show about Percy Jackson. My daughter wanted to do that show. She did it. So I'm like, okay,
Nice.
fine. We'll divide and conquer. You come see mine, I'll come see yours.
Oh.
But I was able to. It's funny. I was the only person above 25 years old in the cast. right? So I go there, I sing that song. Let me just take a step back. I sing my song that I practiced,
Very awesome.
and my daughter's friends are like, ah, right? I'm like, oh, they love me so much. It's very cute. I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna make it, but sure. The lady kind of fell in love with it. She thought I was a perfect abuela because I'm a mom, so I can bring those experiences
Of
to the
course.
role. So second audition comes, they gave us 2 pages of something that we needed to learn that right there, and I absolutely messed that up. Like, you will not believe, it was so bad, so bad. I told Gabby, my daughter, I said the name. I told my daughter, I am not gonna make it. This was so bad. It was terrible. I forgot all the lyrics. I forgot the song, but I just put some character into it.
Right.
It's like, okay, I don't know the lyrics, but I'm gonna own this thing. That I don't know these lyrics and I don't know the music, but it is what it is. I'm standing right here with all these people looking at me. So, long story short, I got the role, which
Awesome.
I was like, really? So first time auditioning for a show, in my 50s, I got it, and it was one of the major characters of the show. So that experience of sharing that show with other kids, I call them kids, they don't call themselves kids, but
Of course.
that are, in their late teens, early 20s. I mean, I felt like I had increased my family by a large number, right? So that was fantastic. And getting to know new people, getting to sing something different. I sing at church, but I had never done anything like this. So at the beginning, I was like, do I dare? But I did it because what can you lose?
Had you
you
done
know?
any have you done any theater before this, like earlier in life, or is this the first time you ever did any kind of
No, no, no,
theater of
no.
any kind? Yeah.
No,
Is
this
it?
was my first one.
That's amazing.
I'm a little dramatic in real life, but other than
Oh, so you've been practicing for the last 50 years. I get it. This is nothing new to you.
exactly.
You're just reading someone else's drama instead of your own, right? That's good.
There you go. Or singing about it, which makes it a little
Of course.
better. Yeah, I
Of
sing in the kitchen when I'm cooking, but like other than that, so it was fantastic.
awesome.
I did not know in my wildest dreams that I was gonna do it, and it was beautiful. And my daughter came to see me. My daughters, both of them, came to see me. Friends,
Right.
family. I had so much support, and I felt blessed to do something like that. It was exhausting, I gotta tell you
Oh yeah.
that, because last week, and that's one of the reasons why I was like, I don't think I should do this. I have a very demanding job, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah.
And every time we rehearse, especially that last week, tech week, it's 11, and you're still there,
Right.
and you start at 6:30 and you end whenever. And I'm like, I don't know, why did I do this? Blah blah blah. I was even self-doubting when I was in tech week, like the show was
Sure.
opening in 3 days.
It's I mean it's natural, right? It's your first time doing it, you've got 1,000 different things in life going on or whatever. So I mean, your confidence is there, but I mean self-doubt is a natural emotion, natural feeling, right? So the key is to
Exactly.
kind of convince yourself, like, look, I've done the work. I'm here. They believe in me. I believe in me. It's going to be fine. And then afterwards, you look at it and you're like, see, I was right. And then you can move on to the next one, right?
That is, yeah, that's true. I mean, yes, it was a lot of work, and
Yeah.
especially because memorizing lines is
Oh,
something that I have never done in my entire life. I can sing,
yeah,
I
yeah.
can, I can remember barely
Sure.
lyrics to songs, but dialogue. And I messed it up, but it was many times during rehearsal. And one of the shows I forgot a whole portion, but it was totally fine.
Yeah.
The guy that did Usnavi, who's the main character, he was my grandson, if you will, on the show. He was so sweet, and he would tell me, okay, now this is a part when we come back in. This is a part where you say blah blah blah.
Nice.
I felt so spoiled by the team, by the cast. So yeah, so I said, okay, I have this job, right? Going back to that comment, I have this job and I have 2 daughters. Why am I doing this? Blah 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 blah. But looking back, I would do it again. I mean, that time. It's not like I'm gonna do it again.
Right.
I lived that experience. Check.
Yes.
My level of energy is not that great. 52. However, it was fantastic. I would do it again. If they,
Yeah.
if if I turn back time and they ask me again, I would totally do it again because it's one of those memories that sticks with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's amazing, right? Trying, especially putting yourself out there like this in such a public way, I guess, at this age when you've never done it before, is definitely, it's definitely something, right? It's something different, or whatever. For me, I love the fact that you're doing it now because I mean, not to get too, I guess, weird or out there, or whatever, right? But like for myself, right? So I have two daughters, both in high school. I recognize that at some point they're going to graduate high school, hopefully go to college, graduate college, and start their own lives, right? I want to make sure that both myself and my wife have enough interests and things that we like and want to do when the kids are, let's say, in our life less frequently, right?
Yeah.
So when they eventually, leave the nest, have their own family, move wherever else, whatever it is they do, I mean, obviously want to support them however I can, but there are people who, are, and again, no judgments, it's just my perspective. People who, have kids and their kid is their entire life. And then once their kid leaves the house to go to high school or college, they don't know what to do with themselves anymore. They're
Yeah.
completely lost. So for me, like I love being a dad and I love my kids, but I also have always tried to maintain the fact that like I need a little independence as well and things that I like and enjoy as well. Because at some point, my kids are in their 20s or 30s, they're not going to necessarily be there every day for me. So at that point,
Yeah.
I need to make sure that both myself and Beth are happy. Like, where do we find our happiness outside of that? You know what I mean?
100%. It's really used this, analogy of the whole mask when you're on the plane.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's overused, but it's a perfect illustration, right? If you don't get to feel yourself, and that I apply that to all aspects of my life, or try to apply that because I don't do it perfectly all the time,
Sure.
of course,
Nobody does. Yeah.
but nobody does. But I have learned that you have to fill your cup because
Yep.
otherwise, what are you going to pour into other people if you don't fill your own cup?
Right.
And as a mom who is Latin American, that thought has been difficult to foster because there's a lot of guilt associated with that behavior, right? Like,
Right.
oh, but I'm a mom. I owe myself to, well, like you do, yes, but there's also the fact that if you have nothing to give, then what's gonna happen, right? So you're gonna be moody, you're gonna be tired, you're gonna be,
Right.
you're not gonna be your best self. So I agree with you 100% on that one.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, this is something I've always said. I mean, for years now, since I've been married and have kids, whatever. For me, it's all about three things. It's all about family time, us time, and me time. Like, I need a fair share of all three of those, or the other two definitely suffer. Like, I need time with my wife and my kids. I need time to enjoy them, go on vacation, hang out together, do really cool stuff. I need time with me and my wife, Beth, to just do fun stuff together, just the two of us to bond, things like that. But, and again, this always gets kind of funny as a hybrid introvert of sorts, I need me time. Like I need a lot of time to myself, whether it be going to the movies by myself, which
Yeah.
for me is like basically top notch. I love doing it, or going to Disney World by myself, or like I talked about last week, going to a Mexican restaurant at the bar and have my own chips and salsa, like just sitting there by myself. Like
Yes.
these are all things that I need. And if all three of these things don't exist in my life in the proper way or the proper, I guess, percentages, the other two definitely suffer for it. So for me, that's the way that
Yeah.
I am. We're not all wired that way. We're all wired differently. But for me, that's really what I need to kind of be at my best self,
100%. Yeah, I heard that in the previous episode, but it's funny because I am not that advanced yet to sit down at a restaurant by myself, but I really
Ooh.
want to do it because
You got to try it. I mean, not without giving where you live. You live by a bunch of different restaurants that I could definitely recommend just doing it. Just go sit at the bar, order some food, get a drink, whatever, watch the TVs. I mean, if you need it, talk to the bartender. If you don't need it, stare at your phone, whatever it is. But like for me, there's something about it that it's just fun. It's just like, I can disconnect and just kind of like, rest, I guess, or relax.
yeah, exactly. It's better than sitting at your couch, right?
I think it is. I mean, you can feel like you're social, but if nothing else, you've got more selection. I mean,
Exactly.
I'm an awful cook. I don't like to cook much or whatever. So when I sit there with the menu, I can, if I go to Cheesecake Factory, they have 300 pages, so I can get whatever I want, right? There's definitely a lot of selection there. Other places a little bit less, but for the most part, like most places have nachos or mozzarella sticks. Or if I
There
just
you
want an
go.
Angry Orchard beer, that's cool also. But there's somebody else bringing it over, and I'm good to go. I can relax, just have some fun,
That is so awesome. I love that. Oh,
So,
by the way, Jeff, I have
yes.
another story for you.
Oh, yes, please, sure.
So this is this is newer than and by the way, this happened at the same time
Okay.
almost
Look at
as
you.
that show.
Parallel pathing, new stuff in your 50s. This is crazy. Breaking
I
news, Litthya.
know.
Go ahead.
I did not know this. Otherwise, I would have said no to the show.
Okay.
But
What do you got?
so yeah, and mind you, there's the slew of other things that I have on my plate. But
Of course.
so as you know, my faith is important to me. I believe in a hope and a future. I believe that fostering your spirit is important. I'm a Christian, so I sing at my church, and but I have always been a volunteer. There's someone who has a job to lead the team, and I have been part of that team. I have volunteered 2 Sundays per month, whatever. Mind you, we are like not but more playing and a full band and engaging with people, and I love it. I think it really connects me to something bigger than myself, and that's why I have loved doing it for the past, I don't even know, 20 years maybe, or more. Yeah, because I was in my 20s in Venezuela when I started, but that's not the point. The point is I have always been a volunteer. Turns out that our leader left, and we're talking about someone who has a career in music and has a wonderful voice, and who's in her 20s, just like Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way, right? So unfortunately, she leaves, and then I cover for her a couple of times to keep, but to hold the fort, if you will. And then I'm told, hey, you're doing a wonderful job holding the fort. Do you want to like maybe get this as a side gig and get paid for it and whatever? And
Nice.
I'm like, what?
Money is good, right? We like money.
Yes, a single mom likes money. But you know what's really funny about that? It's, well, a lot of things are funny about it. Number one, well, as we have established already, I'm in my 50s.
Right.
Number two, I have never studied music. Like I did some, music theory, basic stuff when I was younger, but I have not done that as a career. I was trying to learn piano. I can maybe do this, and that's it, like one chord, two
Sure,
chords, but
sure.
that's it. So I am not a musician per se. So I felt wildly, am I pronouncing that right? Unprepared for this. But I just had the heart and the attitude and the desire to work with people and to help people grow. And as I said, connect with something bigger than myself. And with that, they just told me, yeah, you're doing a great job. Do you want to do like, a side gig with us? So it was scary. Not in my wildest dreams I was gonna think I was gonna do that
Sure, sure.
before. And I'm enjoying this so much. It's not work. And I was praying for something that I could get an extra income here and there, but I don't want to do things that take me out of my house for an entire evening because, I'm a mom.
Of course.
So this came up, and wow, I feel like over the moon. Obviously, it's incredible
Nice.
to be able to do that, and following obviously the how do you call that syndrome when you think that you're not, imposter
Imposter
syndrome.
syndrome. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Definitely,
I have a
definitely
chronic
something
thing.
I suffer from big time. I totally get that.
Yeah, I have it. I have that chronic condition in my life, but especially as I had described, the previous video was phenomenal.
Sure.
So a lot of insecurities that I have had to work with and to overcome.
Right.
But I think the message is, if you have an intention, if you have the heart to do something, but you don't feel fully prepared, or you feel like you're too old, or you're too this, or you're too that, like, just go for it. I mean, if
Definitely.
it's legal, it's
Oh,
the
yeah, I
thing.
mean, yeah, obviously, we'll always preface it by saying if it's legal, it's safe, and
Exactly.
everyone's consenting as well. Just throw that out there. To that point, I mean, I think I made the comment last week in my conversation with Tina that like I've had a lot of roles in my career that like there's offered to me. I was like, yeah, let's just do it. Like I had never done marketing before, and they're like, hey, you want to do marketing? Well, let's just do it. Fine, let's just do it. And it's trying different things. For me, a lot of it's just about getting new experiences, trying new things. If I like it, that's great. Maybe I'll continue in it. But if I don't like it, I get the experience, I've got the perspective, and I can go back to either my comfort zone or find something else that I do like doing, right? So I think that's great, right? You've done it before, not necessarily professionally, but like, it seems like you're enjoying it. You're getting a little extra income, which is nice. You can thrive in it. It's something fun and different. And the great thing about it too is like this is something that in theory you can do longer term, like as a hobby, but get paid for it, right? So if and when you eventually retire from corporate America, this is something that you're in your 50s now. In your 70s or 80s, in theory, you can still do something like this, like as a weekend gig or a night gig, because you enjoy it. It's a little extra money, and you're helping other people out. You're giving them experiences they wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I will have the energy if I'm here.
Keep taking your vitamins, you'll be fine.
Exactly, I'll take my vitamins every day and see what happens. But yeah, it's one of those unexpected things. 2024 was the year of unexpected things.
Sure.
And things that I never in my wildest dreams would have, pictured I would be doing a show and leading worship at a church. Like never. So now I'm like, bring it on, except stuff that requires to fall from a plane. Like I'm not on board with that one.
Yeah, I mean, same. I mean, I think my motion sickness is well documented. That for me, getting out of a plane and skydiving would never happen. As it is, I'm a theme park enthusiast, and I can't do roller coasters anymore because I will probably vomit after each ride. So
I know, that's me too.
I mean, for me, it's always been like that. But like as I've gotten older, like when I was younger, I could do it. I would throw up, and then 5 minutes later, I'd get back on the ride. At this point, like I found, like it was like 3 or 4 years ago, I threw up after going on a ride. I think it was Forbidden Journey, the Harry Potter ride at Universal Studios. And I was just done for the day. So for me, the recovery, I don't kick back as quickly as I once did.
Yeah, thank you. At least somebody understands me. My daughter's Mom, come on, you're so old. I'm like, yes, I am.
Oh,
what's the problem with that?
Yeah, flying with me is not fun at all. Like there was a point where I used to throw up on about 10% of my flights, like legitimately using the barf bag. The show that I would put on would be ridiculous. Like everybody around me, some people would ignore me, some people would give me looks, some people would be offering me tissues. Like it's always just funny kind of to see what the reaction is when somebody vomits on a plane, because it doesn't really happen that often. Like as many times as I've been on a plane or gotten sick on a plane, I'm not sure I've ever seen or heard anybody else do it. But I am that one person, so I guess I am special in my own sort of way, right?
I guess you don't travel with me enough because I am very car sick or plane sick or whatever you want to call it. And yes. That Harry Potter ride, I remember the first time I was like super excited. Yeah, let's do this. And I get out of there and probably my face looked like a sheet of paper because I was about to drop, man.
Oh, no.
And then I decide, hey, I'm going to do it again.
Oh, no.
It's been a while. And maybe I ate something. I don't know. Not a good idea. No. So, you also have to know what your limitations are.
Right? 100%. At this point in life, that's definitely like, earlier in life, again, I know it's about trying new things when we're older. Like when I was younger, there were things that I would try, things that I wouldn't try. But like, as I've gotten older, I do recognize my limitations in terms of what I can or can't do. So like, for example, I ran a marathon when I was 24 years old back in 2002. And I felt awful for months afterwards. At 47, I would never try a marathon again. Like I understand my limitations. A half marathon's probably the limit, probably a little bit too much at this point. But like I'm trying to adjust to life because I recognize that like I want a long-term sustainable life. Like I said earlier, the average lifespan is 77. I'd like to have a healthy, fun life beyond 77. I don't want to just make it a 77. So I got to take care of my mental health, my physical health, stuff like that. So doing everything I can, but being realistic based on history and saying what can or can't I do. And just listening to my body,
That is very true. And listen, you don't know that. I really hope and pray that you get to where you want to get. But in the end, it's not going to be your decision. You do have to do you and do the best you can to stay healthy and stay on top of that. I have the same kind of mantra, right? I have a lot of stuff happening from hereditary conditions from my parents and whatnot. So I really don't know. And because I don't know, that is why I want to enjoy every day at its fullest, provided that I'm not exhausted from work. Right? Sure. But I do want to enjoy myself, enjoy life and live as if I'm gone tomorrow, because you really don't know. And then that's your legacy. That's what you're gonna leave your kids
Yeah.
and the people around you. Is you gave your all, you gave yourself to them, and you were kind of fun to be around. Like, what else can you ask for?
Absolutely. And I'll say this. I mean, I know you're definitely spiritual and religious. Like, I'm not a religious guy. But I am, what I will say is I am a data dork, right? So I am a data geek, whether it be in my personal life or my professional life. So for me, like, I oftentimes try to follow the data and look at trends and look at certain things, right? For example, like if let's say I'm a sports bettor, I know something happens 95% of the time. I feel good betting that it's going to happen, even if it doesn't happen 5% of the time. So if I, read studies or go to the doctor and they say, hey, do this and it'll give you the best long-term sustainable life, like I will follow the science and I will follow the news and I'll follow the data, because that gives
Yeah,
me the best chance.
exactly.
We,
Yeah,
we
I
all
mean,
we all have whatever guides us. For me, that's what makes me comfortable. That's what helps guide me, I guess, through my life at this point.
there you go. By the way, how do you know what to follow? Because there's so much information out there that if I start following them, I go like, what is it? I don't know what it is. Don't drink coffee. Drink coffee. Don't drink too much water. Drink a lot of water. I'm exaggerating.
So yeah, of
Eat
course.
fruit. Don't eat fruit. Like,
It's a great question. I mean, obviously, we all have our own different moral quandaries, and I try to be as good a person as I can be, and like morally help other people out wherever I can, mentor people wherever I can. Again, use data, use logic, and critical thinking. Right? Like I try to, if something is said to me or sent to me, I look at it and I'm like, does this make sense? If it makes sense, why does it make sense, or why does it not make sense? Like I don't generally take things at face value. I mean, that's probably to my detriment sometimes, is people will say something to me that feels like a softball comment, and I'll be like, are we sure? And then all of a sudden people are like, why are you questioning everything? It's just kind of what I do. I'm kind of skeptical. But at the same
yeah,
time, it's because I think a lot of people tend to kind of take too many things at face value and not necessarily recognizing either the intention behind things or kind of like what the butterfly effect is, right? Like if something happens, like what does it mean longer term? Not to
yeah.
get political or whatever, which usually means I'm going to, but it's a case of like, okay, so let's cut taxes to 0%, right? Great. That feels really good for everybody because we got more money in our pocket. Okay, but now we have sinkholes in Route 80 that are collapsing. How do we pay for
Exactly.
those if there's no taxes, right? Okay, someone's breaking into my house. How do the police get paid for if there's no police getting paid for by tax? Things like that, right? So for me, I tend to overthink the butterfly effect of, okay, this
Yeah,
in theory sounds like a good idea, but longer term, if you go to it, it's just not sustainable. Like I want to make sure that obviously things are good for us, for our kids, our grandkids, and all that kind of stuff, right? So
yeah,
again, for me, it's just more a matter of just like looking at it and saying, is this real or is this not real, and how does it make sense?
yeah. I think critical thinking is super important, Jeff, because sometimes, to your point, in my life, like when people know that I have certain beliefs, they think I just take them for face value, and sometimes, and I'm super critical even on myself. I have to stop doing that.
Sure, sure.
But I don't think I will, because I mean, I
I
will
mean, I
get
get it.
better, but not.
As
Yeah,
I've said before, I'm my biggest critic, my biggest judge. Like for me,
hundred
like
percent.
I mentioned to Tina last week, I think also, like for me, like I'll set a goal, and when I hit that goal, I move the goalpost, and I'm pissed at myself, and I'm like, oh, I should have done better. It's like, okay, so here's the example. So this year, my goal, my New Year's resolution was to average 10,000 steps per day for the whole year, which was a
Hmm.
huge stretch to begin with, because previously, I think last year I averaged like 7,200 steps per day for the
Hmm.
year, which I think was my record by far, right? So
That's
7,200
great.
to
That's a good
10,000,
number.
that's a huge jump, right? Statistically, that's a
Yeah,
huge jump. So like I am 3 months into the year, I'm at 10,000 steps on average per day, which is ridiculous, right? And for me, it's not natural. Like I have to go out of my way for multiple walks, runs, whatever else like that. On days when I quote only hit 10,000 steps, and I'm like, hey, how do I hit 11,000 steps? How do I hit
hmm,
12,000? I'm like, guy, come on, what are we doing here? Like your goal was 10,000, which is already, a lot more than previous. Like, are we trying to kill
yes,
ourselves here? What are we doing here? So for me, like again, like whether it be that or other parts of my life, I tend to move the goalposts on myself, which isn't healthy. But for me,
it
I guess it's what
isn't.
I guess it's what motivates me and pushes me to kind of push a little bit harder.
Hmm.
But again, that's probably a little bit too much about my own mindset, I guess.
No, I hear you, because when I was on that whole, I need to do 10,000 steps, which, by the way, it can help you with your health, right? But I'm like, oh, today I didn't get there, so tomorrow I'm gonna do more so that my average is still 10. Like, girl, stop being so obsessed with it. But I do overanalyze things. I wish I was like that in every single area of my life, not all of them, but it could be a good thing and a bad thing,
Yeah.
but it's better than not thinking anything through, right?
Oh, definitely. But things you have to pick and choose, because if you do that in every aspect of your life, you're going to drive yourself nuts, right? You only have so much
Exactly.
bandwidth in your headspace to kind of say, okay, how do I move the goalpost and push myself harder on everything? You can't. Like, I try to pick a couple of things to kind of like, use as goal. Like, to pick 100 New Year's resolutions feels very unrealistic because you're not going to achieve any of them. You're just going to upset
Yeah.
yourself. But if you pick like 1, 2, or 3 things and you focus on them and stick with them, that feels like it's something sustainable and
Yeah.
achievable. It's like professionally, I look at it and they're like, okay, here are your goals for the year. Like first thing I always do is look at my goals and say, are these achievable and how do I achieve them? Right? If it's something that's never been achieved before and it's unrealistic, that's when I start to get a little moody at work. And I'm like, guy, you gave me goals that are unachievable. This just feels like a tough year versus if it's a little bit of a stretch versus something realistic. So, I mean,
yeah,
the key is setting goals and understanding what your limitations are and what you can stretch to,
One thing is a stretch and the other thing is being like Mrs. Incredible, right? Like, come on.
Yeah,
like, I can only stretch at a human, distance.
Right. It's like Litthya. If they said, okay, your goal for this year is to run a 4-minute mile. I mean,
exactly.
I've never seen you run before, but a 4-minute mile feels very unrealistic for either of us at this point, right?
Yeah, my niece will not thank me for that.
No. And if I ever even attempted to do a 4-minute mile, like I would probably be in traction by the end, or I probably, after 1/4 mile when I'm well behind pace, I'd probably be hurt and be done at that point. So it's a case of just being realistic with what your benchmarks are. Look in the, like I said, look in the past and see what you've done in the past. And see how do you improve a little bit. Like every time I do a 5K race, I look at the last time I ran the race and say, how do I beat this by 5 seconds or 10 seconds? Like I don't look at someone else and say, hey, I do it in 34 minutes. They do it in 26 minutes. How do I beat them?
Because how do I beat them?
That's just, I don't. The answer is I don't beat them, right? So it's not a really fair benchmark. So I look at them like, okay, what's my own benchmark and how do I beat my benchmark and how do I go from there,
That's a really great point because I used to be that person that would compare myself to other people.
Right.
And I'm still struggling with that a little bit, but I have gotten better. It's a journey, right? Definitely. So comparing myself to other people have only made me miserable.
Yes.
And feel inadequate all the time and increase my insecurity levels. So I'm like, to your point, my benchmark is myself in the past.
Yeah.
Am I doing better than myself in the past?
Yeah, and to add to that also, you're comparing yourself against their strengths. You know nothing about their weaknesses, right? You've probably got strengths that they don't have.
Exactly.
Right? So you're looking at the wrong aspect of it. You need to look at, in theory, the total picture, as opposed to, well, they're fast, I want to be faster than them. You can look at the other way and say, well, I have 2 daughters that love me and they're amazing. Like maybe they do or don't have that. Like there are different parts of life that you have to kind of compare to and say, okay, I can't just compare a couple of aspects. You look at the whole picture to get a sense of what's realistic and what's not,
Exactly. And there will always be someone who's faster than you,
of course,
smarter than you, more handsome than, like there's always going to be someone.
Definitely more handsome than me, but continue, please.
So that will make you miserable because you will feel like you will never compare.
Right, and, but something to the table that they don't bring, which is why, again, like even professionally, that's why you were hired for your job or I was hired for my job, because I bring something that other people don't. Or like that's why your kids love you, because you bring something to the table that other people around them don't, right? You complete them or bring them stuff that they're not getting elsewhere. So again, I say this at the same time I do also my insecurities and anxieties about it as well.
100%.
But I try to via therapy, via self-therapy and reading, remind myself like, look, I'm doing my best. I'm being the best Jeff that I can be. I'm trying to do what I can to help others around me as well. We're never going to fully get there. But all we can do is keep trying and try to be the best person we can be.
Exactly. And acknowledging that it's not like, oh, well, now I can't learn how to do that because this is who I am.
Right.
And I was made this way. So boom, I was born this way, like the song.
Lady Gaga.
And,
that's it.
Never improve because why? So there's that combination or that like mastery between my original wiring has some things, has some gifts that I'm bringing to a table, right? Or to the party, like Tina says. So that's my wiring, my original kind of makeup.
Yep.
But there's also how your experiences, how the circumstances in life kind of change that and mold that into a better version of yourself. And we can't negate growing because, this is how I'm made. This is my wiring. I will never going to change. Right. Or completely negate that and say that original version is, I don't like that one. I want to be here. I think there's a middle ground between those two, and that's where your best self is, right? So
yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think to go from 0 to 60 is not realistic. I think it's a case of like, say, okay, this is where I am today. Here's where I want to get to, and then figure out a plan of some kind of how to get there. You don't have to get all there in one day. Pick up little skills or kind of little incremental kind of changes to get there to be the best person you want to be. Like for me, if I look at it, I'm like, okay, I want to beat my mile time by a minute, or if I want to lose 10 pounds, right? I'm not going to lose 10 pounds tonight. Like that's just not going to happen. Right. It's a case of, okay, what do I change? I mean, not in a healthy way, I guess you can say.
I was going to say there are methods out there.
Yes. Not good ways, though, I would say. Not without physical harm, which we would never recommend or suggest on this show. But it's a case of putting together a plan and saying, okay, if I want to lose 10 pounds, I would look at it and say, okay, here's how I'm going to change my diet. And here is how I'm going to change my workout regimen and all that kind of stuff. And then take time and effort and work to get there. Like, it's not something I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm like, great, I lost 10 pounds. What's next?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a journey. But I do have to give you kudos because I am a motivator, right? That's my secret sauce or my superpower, whatever you want to call it. Is
Sure.
I am what people call a trailblazer. I open the road for other people. I motivate people. Let's do this. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
We can do that.
You're a hype man.
Getting
right?
something completed in the long term for me is something that I have to train myself to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
But one day you say, you know what? I have this crazy idea. I'm going to start a podcast. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And look at you. You're now in episode 36, is it?
30. This is 36. Absolutely. You're number 36.
Yeah. So, my age.
There it is. Well, Litthya, thank you so much for saying that. I do appreciate that. This has been a labor of love. Like I said before, like this is something that as I got older, I tried out something different. In my 20s, when I've done this, well, I don't know if podcasts existed in my 20s, but realistically, if podcasts existed back then, I don't know if I would have had the guts to try something like this, or the energy, or even just putting myself out there, right? Like in your 20s, here's the expression. I think Patton Oswalt, the comedian, once said, in your 20s, you wonder what everyone else is saying about you. In your 30s, you don't care what they're saying about you. In your 40s, you realize they were never talking about you in the first place. And on that note,
that has been my 50s, because my 40s, I was still thinking that they were all looking at what I didn't do, whatever. Like the level of insecurity, dude, is out here. It has come down a little bit. For those that are listening, I use my hands a lot, so my apologies. But pretend that you're seeing me putting my hand all the way to the top and then bringing it down.
Yep, understood. So with that said, we've definitely said a lot. We've shared a lot. We've talked a lot of stories here. Litthya, anything you want to promote or support, or any Instagram or social media you want to put out there before we call it a day?
That's interesting. Well, if you want to listen to our recordings in my worship team, we have a bunch of stuff in Spotify. It's the Chapel NJ. So the Chapel Worship NJ, I think something like that. So you can always reach out to me through Jeff if you have any questions. But that I'm promoting that. We make no money out of that, of course, but it's good for the soul. So it's always good to listen to things that will enrich your mind and your soul. And I believe in that. I believe in that positive messaging can make a difference in your life. So
awesome.
I appreciate you asking.
Of course, if anybody does want to reach out to Litthya, I'll tag her in the Instagram post, which you can find my Instagram at Everybody's a Story Pod. Additionally, if you want to hear more about Litthya's backstory, you can check out episode 8 of this podcast of Everybody's a Story with Jeff Seltzer. Available on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, and anywhere else you can find a podcast. With that said,
I'm going for number 5.
That's it. We're going to get to episode number 5 with Litthya at some point. Then she'll get the 5-time, whatever merch we come up with. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. We'll see how it works out, but I have full faith that we're going to get there at some point. So at some point we'll get there. With that said, again, as always, this has been a lot of fun. Check out the show on Instagram at Everybody's a Story Pod. You can check out my personal Instagram at Seltzer77 for all things Jeff Seltzer. You can check out the show sponsor at jeffseltzer.com for all things Jeff Seltzer. You can reach out to the show directly via email at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. Once again, a reminder that the show is on all podcast platforms. Video is on Spotify as well as on YouTube at Everybody Has a Story Pod. Audio is everywhere. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, you name it, it's probably there. With that said, have an amazing week. Reminder, we're going to have one more episode probably next week. We have a special guest who I'm really excited to talk about. And then probably be off for a few weeks, as April is going to be super, super busy for me. If you are attending the Eversight Revenue Roundup convention this week, which is in Austin, Texas, definitely come find me. I'll be a guest speaker on Thursday. Lots of fun, I'm sure. We could talk about lots of stuff, I guess. Or if you want to be a guest, again, as always, reach out to me on Instagram. Anyway, have an amazing week, and we'll talk soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.